need you to listen carefully. Not because this is dramatic, but because once I start explaining what happened, you're going to want to interrupt me. Don't. Just let me finish. Because the moment the world went silent, it didn't happen all at once. And by the time I realized something was wrong, it was already too late to stop it. I'm not someone who scares easily. I need you to understand that before anything else. I don't believe in ghosts, I don't jump at shadows, and I've never been the type to imagine things that aren't there. That night started like any other night. And that's exactly why what happened afterward still doesn't make sense to me. Because silence doesn't just appear. Something has to create it. At first, I didn't notice the silence. That's the part that bothers me most. Sound didn't stop suddenly, it just failed to continue. Imagine a song cutting off mid-note. Not fading out, just gone. That's what the world felt like. Have you ever been in a room so quiet that you suddenly become aware of your own breathing? That's where it started. I need you to understand something. Silence isn't empty. We only think it is because we're used to filling it. That night, the silence felt occupied, and I didn't realize that immediately. My body did. My ears felt full, like pressure before a storm, and for the first time that night, I stopped moving. Time stopped behaving normally. I checked my phone, the clock moved forward, but my sense of time didn't. That's when I started to wonder, what if time wasn't broken? What if it was waiting? This is where you might start thinking you'd handle it differently. You'd turn on a light, you'd make noise. I thought the same thing. But when silence feels like it's listening, noise suddenly feels dangerous. I wasn't alone. And no, I don't mean someone was watching me. That would have been easier. It felt like something was waiting for me to notice it. This is the part most people get wrong when they hear the story. They assume the silence was passive. It wasn't. Every thought I had felt anticipated. Before I moved, the pressure changed. Before I turned, the air shifted. You know that feeling when someone stands too close behind you? Multiply that by an entire room. Nothing happened for a long time, and that's when I realized something terrifying. Waiting was the point. Silence doesn't rush. It has patience. When sound came back, it didn't feel like relief. It felt like something had been forced to stop before it was finished. Everyone said it was over, that nothing had really happened, but I haven't experienced silence the same way since. I don't sleep in quiet rooms anymore. I need sound, not for comfort, but for proof. Some people think the silence was a glitch. Others think it was something learning. And sometimes, late at night, I wonder if it's waiting again. Just quieter this time. I've told this story to exactly one person before. Not because it's unbelievable, but because once you start talking about it, you realize how much of it depends on being believed. And belief was the one thing that kept failing us back then. This happened when I was still in school. Old enough to know when something didn't make sense. Young enough to assume there had to be an explanation. There were only two of us who noticed it. Me and Isaac. And the strange part is, nothing dramatic happened at first. No shadows, no whispers, no locked doors or screaming alarms. Just small things refusing to stay consistent. The first thing I noticed was the bell. It rang twice. Not loudly, but clearly enough that Isaac looked up at me at the same time I looked at him. We both stood, and then nobody else did. The teacher kept writing. The class kept talking. No reaction, not even confusion. When we asked later, people looked at us like we were joking. That's when Isaac said something that stuck with me. He said, "Maybe it rang for us." After that, it felt like the school adjusted. Not aggressively, carefully. Hallways felt longer only when we walked them together. Teachers repeated sentences, but only when we paid attention. And the moment we stopped talking about it, everything went back to normal. That was the first time I wondered if noticing it was the problem. There was a classroom on the second floor no one ever used, except it was never actually empty. Sometimes the lights were on. Sometimes desks were moved. Sometimes it smelled warm. When we asked about it, teachers gave different answers. Not lies, conflicting truths. Isaac started writing things down. I stopped him. I don't know why. Something about recording it felt like crossing a line. I noticed a change before he did. Isaac stopped reacting. Not calmer, not braver, just accepting. When something didn't make sense, he'd shrug. And when I asked him about it later, he'd say, "That's how it's always been." That sentence still makes my stomach tighten. The last real moment happened during an exam. Total silence. No movement. I noticed the clock moving backward, just slightly, just enough. I looked at Isaac. He looked at the clock too. And then he looked back at me and shook his head. Not in fear, in warning. I understood it then. The school didn't want silence. It didn't want fear. It wanted compliance. As long as at least one of us disagreed, it couldn't finish whatever it was doing. We graduated. Isaac and I drifted apart. Not dramatically, naturally. Years later, I ran into him. I asked him if he remembered that classroom. He smiled politely and said he never noticed anything strange about the school. And the terrifying part wasn't that he forgot. It was how relieved he looked not to remember. I still avoid agreeing too quickly with people, especially in quiet places, especially when everyone else seems certain. Because once, agreement felt like an invitation.